It was the last Saturday of October when Caleb and Maya discovered the book. They weren't supposed to be in the attic. Maya's grandmother had made that perfectly clear when she invited them to stay for the weekend. The attic is off limits, the stairs are rotten, and there's nothing up there worth seeing. 3 rules, simple enough. But Maya's grandmother had also fallen asleep by 8 o'clock. Her soft snoring drifting under the living room door like a lullaby, and Caleb had that look on his face, the one Maya had known since 3rd grade, the one that meant he'd already made up his mind. "She said the stairs were rotten," Maya whispered, standing at the bottom of the narrow staircase, flashlight in hand. "She exaggerates," Caleb said, already halfway up. Maya followed. She always did. The attic smelled like cedar and old rain. The ceiling was low, the wooden beams draped with decades of dust, and the single round window at the far end let in just enough moonlight to make everything look like a black and white photograph. Cardboard boxes were stacked along the walls. An old rocking horse sat in the corner with no eyes, just 2 pale circles where glass had once been. "This was a terrible idea," Maya said. "This is amazing," Caleb said. He was already crouched over something in the corner, his flashlight aimed downward. "Maya, come look at this." She crossed the attic carefully, stepping over a broken lamp and a stack of old magazines. Caleb was holding something flat, rectangular, a book wrapped loosely in a piece of oilcloth that had gone stiff with age. He peeled the cloth back slowly, like someone unwrapping something fragile. The cover was dark brown leather, cracked at the spine, with no title printed on it. Instead, burned directly into the leather in uneven letters, as if done with a hot iron, were 3 words: Liber Lupus Verus. "Latin," Maya said immediately. She was the one who took Latin at school, which Caleb had always called the most useless class in human history. Right now, he did not say that. "What does it mean?" he asked. Maya looked at the cover for a long moment. The true Book of the Wolf. Neither of them spoke for 3 full seconds. Then Caleb opened it. The pages were thick and yellowed, covered in handwritten text, so small and dense it was almost painful to read. Some sections were in English, some in Latin, some in what looked like German. Pressed between certain pages were dried flowers, black now, crumbling at the edges, and what appeared to be animal fur, coarse and dark brown. The first page in English read, "I write this as a warning, not as a legend, not as folklore. What I have witnessed is real. What I have survived barely is real. And what I have buried in the woods behind the house on Heller Road is real. If you have found this book, it means either I am dead or the thing I buried has moved. If the latter, God help you, God help us all." It was signed at the bottom, Edmund Hale, October 31st, 1923. "Heller Road," Caleb said. He looked up. "Maya, what's the address of your grandmother's house?" Maya felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. 14 Heller Road, she said quietly. The attic felt smaller suddenly. The moonlight through the window seemed thinner. Somewhere outside, in the woods that pressed up against the back of the property, the same woods Maya had played in as a little girl, something made a sound, low, distant, gone before she could be sure she'd heard it at all. "We should go back downstairs," Maya said. "Just a few more pages," Caleb said. According to Edmund Hale's account, it had begun in the autumn of 1922, exactly 1 year before he wrote his warning. A man had come to Heller Road, a traveller from somewhere in Eastern Europe, his accent thick, his clothes old-fashioned even by the standards of the time. He called himself Aldrich. He asked to stay in Edmund's barn for a few nights while his horse recovered from a thrown shoe. Edmund agreed. He was a generous man by his own account. For 2 nights, everything was fine. Aldrich ate dinner with the family, told stories about the mountains where he was from, played cards with Edmund's sons. He was strange but pleasant. On the 3rd night, Edmund woke up to the sound of screaming. It was coming from the barn. He grabbed his rifle and ran outside. The barn door was hanging open. Inside, his 2 horses were dead, not attacked, not torn apart, but simply dead, their eyes wide and their bodies unmarked, as if they had been frightened to death. Aldrich was gone, but in the mud outside the barn door, Edmund found tracks. They began as boot prints, a man's boot, heavy, deep, and then, mid-stride, they changed. The boot print became something else, wider, longer, 5 toes spreading into points, claws. Edmund followed the tracks to the edge of the woods. He did not follow them into the woods, not that night. The disappearances began the following week. The book read. First livestock, then a dog. Then, God forgive me for what I must write next. A child from the farm 2 miles east, 7 years old. They found nothing, not even her shoes. Caleb's voice had gone quiet as he read aloud. Maya was sitting beside him now, her shoulder pressed against his, the flashlight trembling slightly in her grip. I hunted it for 11 months. I learned what it was. I learned what it feared. Silver, yes, the old stories have that right, but more than silver, it fears its own name. Every creature of this kind carries a name, not the name it was born with, but the name it was given when it was changed. Speak the name, and it becomes visible. Speak it a second time, and it becomes still. Speak it a third time, and it becomes bound. He caught it, Maya whispered. I caught it, the next line read, as if Edmund had heard her. On the last night of October 1923, I used the silver, I used the name, and I buried what remained in the iron box beneath the oldest oak, 40 paces into the woods behind the house. I do not believe it is dead. I believe it is sleeping, and I pray every single day that it continues to sleep. That was the last page of text. Below Edmund's final words, someone else had written in different handwriting, newer ink, but still old, decades old. It woke up 1987. We lost Thomas. We moved. Do not go into the woods. The handwriting was Maya's grandmother's. Maya closed the book. We need to wake up Grandma, she said. Maya. Now, Caleb. They went downstairs. The living room was empty. The blanket her grandmother had been sleeping under was folded neatly on the couch, which meant she had woken up and gone to bed properly, which meant she was in her bedroom at the end of the hall, and Maya did not want to wake her and explain why they had been in the attic. But she had to. She knocked on the bedroom door. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Grandma? She opened the door. The bed was empty. The sheets were pulled back, as if her grandmother had gotten up in a hurry. The window on the far wall was open, just slightly, just a few inches, and the curtain was moving in the cold night breeze. On the floor, just below the window, was a single muddy footprint. Not a boot, not a human foot. Maya's throat closed. She could not speak. She could not move. She stood in the doorway of her grandmother's empty bedroom, holding a book that was over 100 years old, and she felt, truly felt, for the first time in her 16 years, the specific and absolute terror of understanding that something was wrong in a way that could not be fixed by an adult, because there were no adults left. Caleb, she finally managed. She's gone. They searched the house in 4 minutes. Every room, every closet, the basement, the kitchen. Nothing. Maya's grandmother was gone. The back door was unlocked, and the motion sensor light above the back porch was triggered, pointing toward the tree line 40 feet away. The woods. We call the police, Caleb said. And tell them what? Maya said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. Something had kicked in. Something cold and clear, the way adrenaline burns away panic and leaves behind a kind of terrible calm. That my grandmother wandered into the woods at 10 at night, and also we think there's a werewolf? Yes, exactly that. Caleb. She held up the book. He wrote the name down. Edmund wrote the name. It's in here somewhere. Speak it once. It becomes visible. Speak it twice, and it becomes still. Speak it 3 times, it becomes bound. She looked at him. My grandmother wrote in this book. She knew about this, which means she knew the name, which means she went into those woods on purpose. Caleb stared at her. Why would she? To stop it, Maya said. Because it woke up again, and she went alone because she didn't want us involved. Her voice broke just slightly. We have to go after her. Caleb was quiet for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Maya could see him weighing every rational thought he had against the muddy, non-human footprint on her grandmother's floor. Find the name, he said. We don't go in until we have the name. They found it on a page near the middle of the book. Hidden, almost, written in tiny letters inside the illustration of a moon, curled around the edge of it like a frame. Veldrak. 3 syllables, strange in the mouth, heavy somehow like a stone. Maya wrote it on her hand in pen, pressing hard. Then she wrote it on Caleb's hand too. They went into the woods. The trees swallowed the light from the house within seconds. Maya had her flashlight. Caleb had his phone. The ground was soft from recent rain, and their footsteps were too loud, and the woods were too quiet. No insects, no wind in the branches, no distant owl calls, just silence, the kind that has weight. They counted paces from the tree line. 30, 35, 40. The oldest oak was obvious when they reached it, massive, ancient, its roots rising from the earth like the knuckles of a buried hand. And at its base, disturbed and scattered, was dirt, recently moved. A rectangle of bare earth, roughly the size of a suitcase. The iron box was open, empty, and standing next to it, completely still with her back to them, was Maya's grandmother. "Grandma!" Maya stepped forward. "Grandma, it's me." "Don't touch her." Her grandmother's voice was tight, controlled. She still hadn't turned around. "Don't touch her and don't move. It's here. It's been here since before you came outside. It followed you from the house." Maya stopped. Caleb grabbed her arm. "How long have you been out here?" Maya whispered. "Long enough." A pause. "Did you find the name?" "Yes." "Good. Then this is what we're going to do." Her grandmother turned around slowly. Her face was calm, unnervingly calm. The face of someone who had made peace with something terrible. In her right hand she held a small silver crucifix. In her left hand she held something else, a thin iron spike, dark with age. "The name binds it," she said quietly. "But binding isn't enough. Edmund buried it bound, and bound things eventually work themselves loose." Her eyes moved past them, to something behind them, in the dark between the trees. To end it, someone has to speak the name while the iron touches the iron box it came from. She held up the spike. "I've known that since 1987, since I lost Thomas, since I wasn't fast enough or brave enough to do what needed doing." Maya heard it then, behind her, breathing, low and rhythmic and wrong. Too slow for a human, too deliberate for an animal. A sound like something conserving its effort, waiting. "Don't turn around," her grandmother said softly. "Not yet. When I tell you, you say the name. Say it once, loud as you can, then say it again, then one more time, and don't stop, no matter what you hear, no matter what it sounds like. Can you do that?" Maya's hand was shaking. The name was written on her palm in blue pen, 3 syllables. She could feel the breathing behind her getting closer, spreading out, as if the darkness itself was leaning in. "Yes," she said. "Good girl." Her grandmother looked at her, really looked at her, the way she had when Maya was small and frightened of thunderstorms, a look that said, "I see you, you are loved, you are not alone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry I tried to handle it alone. That was selfish. A pause. Now. Maya turned around. It was standing at the edge of the light, 7 feet tall, upright like a man but shaped like nothing human. Its body was wrong in the way that dreams are wrong, the proportions shifting slightly as she looked at it, like her eyes couldn't agree on what they were seeing. Its fur was dark and slick. Its eyes were pale gold, wide and entirely still. It looked at her. And Maya Reyes, 16 years old, terrified down to her bones, looked back at it, and she said the name, Veldrak. The thing flinched, just slightly, like a candle flame touched by a breath. Veldrak. It went still, every muscle in its body locked. The pale gold eyes were still fixed on her, but its limbs had stopped moving. Frozen mid-step, suspended like a photograph, she heard her grandmother moving behind her, heard the soft thud of iron on iron, the spike touching the edge of the open box. Maya took a breath. Veldrak. The sound it made was not a howl, it was not a roar. It was something older than both of those, a sound from the bottom of the world, a sound of something ancient and vast being reduced, being pressed back, being compelled against its will into a space too small for it. The trees shook, the ground shuddered, the flashlight in Maya's hand flickered and died. In the darkness, the pale gold eyes dimmed, and went out. The police came at midnight, after Caleb finally called them. Maya's grandmother told them she had gone for a walk and gotten turned around in the dark, which was a lie so plain and obvious that the young officer writing the report seemed embarrassed to write it down. But there was nothing else to say. There was nothing in the woods except an old tree and a hole in the ground beside it, and a dented iron box, and the three of them standing there cold and mud-streaked and alive. They drove back to the house in silence. Maya's grandmother made hot chocolate, and they sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning, and she told them everything. About 1987, about Thomas, who had been her younger brother, who had been 17, who had gone into the woods alone because he was brave and foolish and hadn't known about the name, about finding the book in the attic just like they had, about spending 36 years waiting for it to wake again, knowing it would, not knowing when. "Is it gone now?" Caleb asked. "Really gone?" Maya's grandmother wrapped both hands around her mug. She was quiet for a moment. "Edmund thought burying it was enough," she said. I hope that what we did tonight was different, more complete." She looked at the book, sitting on the table between them. "But I've learned not to use the word gone about things like this." Maya looked at the book. The cover was different. She hadn't noticed it immediately. Her eyes were tired, her mind was exhausted, and it was a small change. Easy to miss, but it was there. On the leather cover, below the burned Latin letters, there was now a new mark. Not burned in, not written, just there, as if it had always been there and she simply hadn't seen it before. A handprint, small, like a child's. Maya thought of the 7-year-old girl who had disappeared in 1922. She thought of Thomas, who had been 17 in 1987. She thought of all the names this thing had taken, over a century of sleeping and waking and sleeping again. She closed her hand over the handprint on the cover. "We should bury the book," she said. Her grandmother looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "We should." Epilogue. They buried it at dawn, not in the woods, not near the iron box. In the garden, beneath the rosebush, her grandmother had planted the summer after Thomas died. Deep enough that nothing could find it easily, deep enough to matter. Maya tamped the last of the dirt down with the back of a shovel and stood up and looked at the sky, which was going pale gold at the horizon. The same color as those eyes, she thought, and then pushed the thought away. Caleb was standing beside her. He hadn't said much in the last hour. That was okay. Some things don't need words immediately. Some things need a little time to become sayable. "You know what bothers me," he said finally. What? The book. He looked at the freshly turned earth. Edmund wrote in it in 1923. Your grandmother wrote in it in 1987. He paused. 2 entries, 2 times it woke up. Maya looked at him. There might be other entries, he said, before Edmund's, in the Latin, in the German, other people. Other times. He paused again. That book is old, really old, which means it's woken up before, Maya said. A lot of times, Caleb said. And every time someone had to say the name. Someone had to know the name. He turned to look at her. How did Edmund know it? How did the first person know it? Who wrote it down originally? Who made the box? Maya didn't answer, because she didn't have an answer. The rosebush above the buried book stirred slightly in the morning breeze, its remaining autumn leaves trembling. She thought about the handprint on the cover. She thought about the way the book had been wrapped so carefully in oilcloth, as if someone had wanted it preserved, as if someone had wanted it to be found. Some books are meant to be found, she thought. Others find you. She wasn't sure anymore which one this had been. She walked inside. She washed the mud off her hands. She made breakfast. She did not look out the back window toward the woods, not even once.